So that was the perspective of Greg McWilliams during the week. Just for people who haven't read the article, to give a general sense, very dramatic headline where they quoted a prominent figure at a dinner recently, caught her saying, "Who gives an F about women's rugby?" Within the piece, it seemed there were issues with communication over team selection, players maybe missing off emails as well when they were dropped, players not properly consulted over the change of the colour shorts. Some players, it seemed, found out of the change on Instagram. One player called it a PR stunt. The IRFU dispute that claim. They say it was discussed on the Japan tour last year. There was one example of protein supplements not provided. There was a criticism of the IRFU for not exploring hybrid contracts, that they wanted full-time or nothing. And certain players had requested something more akin to part-time. One of the points made in the piece was no AIL representative on an IRFU subcommittee for women's rugby. Again, I'd put it to you, Fiona, there was nothing shocking in this piece. Certainly that it was there to an international audience, I'm sure didn't go down well with the IRFU. What was your perspective on it?
Yeah, look, there was nothing shocking in this piece. I mean, we've all been through incidents before in the past, so I wasn't shocked in reading it. I was a bit disappointed with some of the things, you know, around, especially about selection. Like Sene will talk more about that because she would have been involved in, and teams set out policies around that. But from my perspective, I read it. But what I'm more interested in is the rugby now. And I think Greg, obviously, the RFU are his employers. He can't come out and give out about them. And we all know there's background stuff going on. But I think he's right. We've got to start focusing on these players now. The RFU have slowly been given more and more. I would have liked to seen it happen a few years ago, but it's starting to go and the wheels are starting to turn in. And it's almost like a new start for this team. And I think if we can start looking at the rugby, giving this coaching team a chance, put all that stuff to bed. It is not good enough that it happened. You know, no player needs to feel like that. But I just want to be able to look now, and I want to see articles about this team's performance and how they're doing and how good the coaching staff are and how good the players are.
I suppose Greg McWilliams used the phrase historic, Jenny, about a number of the issues. How historic are they? I mean, the Japan tour and the change of shorts is a more recent issue, for instance.
Yeah, like I think there's been some instances where it's quite close enough and it's still like recent history, and others where it could be a couple of years ago. The fact of the matter is that within the IRFU there is some absolutely unbelievable people that want to strengthen the women's game, and it's getting that way. But there's still those pockets where you're going to have people, for instance, shouting at a dinner party, "The women's rugby is irrelevant." That's probably the same in every women's sport. Not everyone is going to like everything, and I think that's fair enough. It's an irrelevant voice that I wouldn't really care about. Would I value their opinion? No, so I'm not going to listen to their criticism. I think there is still a ways to go, but it's, as Fee said, it's going in the right direction. I think talking to players more that are involved, not just kind of making these decisions in silo, is really important. And current players now kind of know what they need and kind of building from there. So it is disappointing, and it's something where it is disappointing that I think everyone on this panel is like, it's unsurprising, which in itself it says a lot.
Yeah.
But there's bigger fish to fry, and kind of move on and focus on like actual things that we can change that are going to have a positive impact on the game, on the national team, all the way down to grassroots level for girls.
Where are you on this one, Sene?
Look, it's disappointing, of course. And I'm disappointed as well that it's got the airtime that it has, because it's exactly what Fee and Jen has been saying. Like, you'd want to be talking about some of the good stuff that the girls have been doing, some of the work on areas. But look, certainly it's one of those things that if you haven't been in the arena and you haven't, and you don't understand the high stakes of high performance sport in the women's game, it's something that we wouldn't, I suppose, bear respect in terms of what people say about this and that. But at the same time, you know, yes, there was the part there about the selection, those sorts of things. I think it's also really important to highlight how different it is from the men's and women's game, because that's a classic example of how important it is to communicate effectively when you're coaching women. And like Fiona had sort of alluded to me elaborating on that piece, we had put policies back then. It's obviously different now, but very similar in terms of, what we felt was a collaborative decision-making with the management, coaches, players as a leadership group and as a full squad, just to understand what is the process of if you're being dropped, if you're being selected and those sorts of things. Very simple. And then once that's made, then that's the standard to maintain. So once it doesn't maintain in your environment that you've set, then that's when you can call it out.
OK, so in a sense, I'm sure lots of people watching will say, well, I've had countless examples of people being dropped in brutal ways, but your point is the team came together and said, well, this is the process, this is the standard in terms of how we'll deliver that news, and so if that standard's broken, that might be the disappointment reflected in the piece.
Those are different nuances, yeah. Girls might have done something different, but yeah.
So as a final thought, because it would be, this is such a big game today and I want to talk about the game as well, I'm picking up a sense from Jenny and Fiona here. You feel things have been bad. They're improving.
Yeah, definitely improving.
To what extent? Marks out of 10 here. How do we decide what's acceptable? Improving in a way that you're happy with or not happy with?
No, I would have liked it started a long time ago, and we'd be looking at the benefits now.
Maybe over the last 2 years, 18 months? Yeah. Do you like what you're seeing or do you still have reservations?
Look, in all areas of work, you're going to have reservations about certain things. I suppose even reading that article, and I just want to highlight the thing that disappointed me as well was that, that dual contract for those people have given so much to not have them, not have them in there and their experience, and they had to walk away from the game. So that disappointed me. But what I'm seeing now is that negativity. It isn't as fast as I'd like. The RFU haven't done as much as I'd like. But I want to talk about rugby and I want to talk about the girls that are out there, and hopefully it'll be put to bed down the line and we'll look back and say, God, that was an awful time. I think we've just got to start focusing on what's out there, and especially these girls, game week, reading stuff like that. I want them to be able to read stuff. Oh, look, I made 15 tackles, and kind of have that focus on that.
Quick final word.
I think for me, and again, it's of that piece, the one that I would is the dual contracts. If there's players that have the ability to play for Ireland but still want to have a career, make it as easy as possible for them to succeed in a green jersey and listen to them. So after this Six Nations, reflect, how can we improve? How can we kind of make it easier for those players to still be involved in both in some capacity? And go from there. Like, it shouldn't be set in stone. You should be constantly changing, reiterating the plan in a way that best fits the game now.
Don't be as rigid, maybe.